Am I getting it? It was just, sorry. For everybody on Zoom, we're about a few minutes out. Just wanted to make sure you're all there, know what's happening. I thought it was me on the mic.
Testing.
Thank you. I think it's time. I think I'm only 1 minute and 12 seconds late, according to my watch. So not too terrible. Everybody, my name is Callie Wilsey. I'm the Director of Policy and Strategy for the City of Reno. Thank you so much for being here tonight, sharing your time with us for this important community process. I'm joined by Kimi Shigetani with Flow Analytics, our independent data analytics firm, who's our consultant on this project and does redistricting projects all across the country. Tonight is our second meeting in our redistricting process this year, where we're redrawing the ward boundaries for the city of Reno. I just want to express thanks to everyone who has participated so far, whether you've attended meetings, whether you've used the online survey or the mapping tool, or even just called us to ask questions and clarify what is happening at the process. And for all of those who are new tonight, we welcome you. So tonight we're going to kick off our second phase and the second round of community input. So before we dive in, some housekeeping items. We are recording and I know that there was some audio issues last time. So for all of our friends on Zoom, we are going to monitor the chat. If you have those, please let us know. I will grab a different mic. We've been testing it, hoping we're good. But if you have that issue, please let us know. And the video will be posted on reno.gov/redistricting after the meeting, probably tomorrow. And for those who are in the room, we do have parking validation if you parked in the City Hall parking garage. So make sure before you leave, you slide that ticket into the little machine that's out on the security desk to make sure that that is all taken care of for you. So James, can you go ahead and give me the presentation and let's share our screen, please. Awesome. Thanks so much. So here's what you can expect tonight. What we are going to talk to you is what we heard from you in round one, largely focused on communities of interest. We went out to the community over the last month and really asked about your neighborhoods, your communities of interest. And so we're going to talk about what we heard. We also received a lot of maps from folks, and it was very cool to see the different ideas that came through that platform. We're going to explain how that input was used to draft the draft ward maps. And we're going to explain the 6 different draft maps that we have for you tonight. We're also going to talk about how you can review them and how you can provide feedback on these maps. And just like last time, we'll end with a Q&A session, both for everybody in the room, as well as on Zoom and in the hybrid setting. Yeah, really kind of jump in right now on reno.gov. You can see the 6 preliminary draft maps. For those in the room, you have a packet for you. We printed them out just to make it easy for tonight's meeting. But if you're at home, we also wanted to make sure that it was available for you tonight as you're sitting there on your computer, that you can easily pull them up. There are 3 different kind of ways to access them, and it'll become more clear throughout the presentation. But you have the draft maps, the draft scenarios that actually have summary statistics. It includes statistics about populations for each of the scenarios, as well as demographic information. There is a web application that is the interactive portion that allows you to kind of see it, zoom in, look at the streets, look at the different scenarios. And then Districtor, which is the mapping tool. You can also pull them up through there because you'll be able to revise the draft maps and submit them that way. So just a little bit of it's not working. I was talking that whole time about that slide. So here's what you can expect tonight. On reno.gov/redistricting. I'm sure that was really helpful for everybody at home. So apologize for that. Again, 3 different areas, reno.gov/redistricting, right there kind of in the middle of the page for you to find them. So a reminder about why we're here and the effect of this process. So what we are doing is we're determining which neighborhoods and communities are grouped together for the purposes of electing a council member. Our city charter requires this change, and we transition from 5 to 6 wards, and it must be done in 2024. This change was recommended by the Charter Committee, which is a citizen appointed committee of citizens, and they made this recommendation back in 2016. Their goal was to increase responsiveness of the elected officials by reducing the number of people that those individuals represent. That bill passed in 2017, and that's what led us here today to make sure that we are preparing for that transition from 5 to 6 wards. So this could really change who represents you at the local level on the Reno City Council. Change also changes the composition of your city council, as a quick reminder. So there will still be 7 members of the council when this transition is complete, but the at-large council member position will be replaced by a 6th member that represents the new ward. Transition will be complete when voters elect that first person to represent Ward 6 in the 2024 election cycle. So our near-term deadline is to get the final boundaries to the Washoe County Registrar of Voters by September 1st. And that deadline will then be followed by a period of election preparation and the actual election process. Representations from wards 1, 3, 5, and 6 will be on the ballot next year. Reno's approach to redistricting. Our commitment to you is to be transparent, to be community informed, and to be data driven. And we're going to do that through 3 fundamental components of our approach. We have a set of redistricting principles. We're going to revisit those tonight and why they're important and how those really play into the compromise that we've all talked about. We're going to talk about the use of data, and it's going to be informed by you, our community. Lined out for the community input process for the 2023 redistricting process. We just wrapped up phase 1, which was heavily focused on asking you for feedback on communities of interest and defining neighborhoods. We turned this feedback into a series of draft maps, and we'll be asking for your input on these starting tonight, going through July 14th. So you can see we've got it highlighted. We're in that second phase, kickoff tonight through July 14th. Then what we're going to do is take all that feedback. We're going to revise the maps and present them to you in late July and move those to council in August for final discussion and adoption, the goal of hitting that September 1st deadline. During that first phase, we saw community involvement in multiple levels. We held 2 community meetings and we went to all 5 neighborhood advisory boards. We also saw a lot of involvement online. 53 people submitted surveys defining their communities of interest or telling us about their neighborhoods. 89 different maps were submitted through our districtor portal, and we received 45 different emails with comments about the process and neighborhoods and communities of interest. Input log again for our commitment to transparency is on reno.gov/redistricting. So if you want to see all of the comments that came through, they are up there for you to review. Log available for transparency, but we did notice some themes as we reviewed all the feedback. One of those themes was what I call the arms of Reno. We saw a lot of different proposals that essentially take from the north coming down, the south coming up, and the west moving in, leaving you the middle of Reno to kind of figure out the other 3 wards and where those boundaries are. There was a lot of different ways that people kind of provided those boundaries, but that was one theme that we saw. We also saw some consistent use of different streets for boundary lines. South Virginia Street for an east and west boundary, use of I-80 on the north and south side. Use of the Truckee River was another way that people presented creating that boundary. We also saw use of McCarran that would separate the North Valleys area, kind of then coming down to where Audie and Wells are. And down south, we also saw a lot of people use the Huffaker Hills area as another boundary line adjustment. So again, not all across the board, but we did look for common themes that you will see kind of reflected in different various fashions, not all together in these maps. One really interesting component that came out during our first month of this process is the conversation about downtown. And there are competing viewpoints here. We heard from some community members that the downtown ward should be represented by one individual, and it should be one kind of sole ward in and of its own. We heard from other individuals who they felt that there was value in having multiple council members touch and represent central Reno, downtown, midtown area. So when we get to those maps, you're going to see that there are several proposals that do that because we're trying to tease out that information and what will work best for our community. We also heard a lot of communities of interest all across our community. We heard from the Cyan and Bella Vista neighborhoods that they should be combined with Damani Ranch and Double Diamond in the south. We heard from folks in Donner Springs near Mira Loma. We also heard from folks in the Neal Road area, and they identified neighborhoods as specific communities of interest. In the North Valleys, largely folks kind of identified the entire North Valleys as was community of interest, but we also saw smaller ones such as Stead, Golden Valley, Cold Springs, Lemon Valley, Panther Valley. We saw those kind of more narrowed topics. We also heard from folks about the university area and that the university area as a neighborhood is broader than just the university property and expands beyond that and the impact of that from the neighborhood perspective. We heard about some large PUDs on more of the outskirts of Reno, Somerset, Lake Ridge, Ranchera, Collin Ranch. We heard from those individuals as well about making sure that those neighborhoods stayed intact. You remember we've done this process just 2 years ago following the census. And so some of those comments are still relevant here. The Audie Wells area was one that we heard a lot about, was maintaining that area and shouldn't be split up. Country Club Acres in the Virginia Lake area as one community of interest, as well as the traditional Wells Avenue area is also one that we heard about last time and this time. So, and not everyone defines these neighborhoods the same. Sometimes those lines are a little bit different, end on a different street. So it's a great process to kind of look through and see everybody's feedback. What you see on this screen on the right-hand side is that map, and I know it's really hard to see. It's kind of intended to be that way, but these are the communities of interest that people actually put on the map for us. We took in a lot of different input in different ways, but this is one, and you will actually be able to click on those in the new web application and kind of see what they are. So it looks a little messy right here. On the web app, you get to kind of see it a little bit closer. Play with that. So again, this doesn't represent all of the feedback that we received. There was other communities of interest, other neighborhoods identified, but we did want to just kind of share some of the information that we heard from folks. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kimmy. She's going to walk us through how all this feedback comes together, turns into the maps, and explains how Flow prepares these maps for us and the process that we're going to go through next.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Okay. So the redistricting process itself is actually intended to be sort of an iterative process when we get to this stage. So we've gotten the data collection completed, which I hope will not end today, but we'll continue on with these draft maps, and then also input from the council. So we've put together 6 draft scenario maps for you, and those are what we'll be reviewing tonight. And then the next step really is the community and additional input and council input. Revisions of those maps based on any input we receive next few weeks. And then it goes to the council for final approval and the plan adoption. And so again, it is an iterative process. The 6 maps that you see in your packet and that we'll be going over tonight are not perfect maps, if there is such a thing. And then they are also not meant to be the maps that you have to choose from. They are simply ideas, get some feedback on so that we can move forward in this process. Redistricting principles. Be able to abide by the Voting Rights Act, that we have population in each ward, that the wards are contiguous. We do have 2 cities right now whose terms extend into 2026. And so those areas, they will remain in those areas. They are fairly far apart on the map. And we must solicit input from the community, which we've been doing, and I think the city's done an amazing job so far. And then the 2020 census must be used as the data source. The shoulds in this process, we should be preserving neighborhood integrity as much as possible. There are often trade-offs when we do this. And so sometimes some neighborhoods are able to be kept whole, and sometimes we have to split other neighborhoods to be able to balance the population, because that is a redistricting requirement. Well, natural boundaries can include highways. So you'll see 80 and 395. You'll see major arterials being used as lines that we use to divide the wards. And the wards should be as compact as possible. And this is more of a visual thing. If it looks compact, it probably is compact, as long as it's not sort of squiggling around all over the map. Based on the census data from the 2020 census, wards the equal the 44,027 individuals in each ward. So that is for across all 6 wards. You'll see a little bit of variation in each ward. I do think that we do a fairly good job of getting the deviation as low as possible. So in your packet, effectively, you have the same maps. What I am going to do is I will be over at the computer over there driving what we call our web app. And what that app does is it allows us to drill down to street level to a bit harder to tell on the paper maps that you have, and really harder to tell on the slides up here. So we'll be able to drill down into those maps. We'll also be able to show you the data layers that and we work on creating these maps. It's a data layer that we're able to overlay on as well. So give me just 1 minute to get that up.
Thanks, everybody. We're going to give her a second. We thought it would be more helpful to kind of, instead of seeing big maps at the far level, for her to drive in just a little bit closer, and also just make sure that the audio works over there for all of our friends at home.
Yes. Okay. Perfect.
It's a little bit low. James, can we bump that mic?
Like that's a lot louder, so that's good. Okay, so I'm going to walk through some of the layers that we have, and we use ArcGIS if anyone is nerdy and is interested in that aspect of it. But this is what we use to develop the maps. So we can zoom in quite closely, actually. And so the pink, what you see, all these lines all over the place, are the current wards right now. We can overlay the yellow lines are the community of interest, submissions that came in. I'm going to start turning these off because it's going to get very cluttered in a second. These are the county subdivisions. We have a layer for business improvement districts. Special planning districts are these blue, kind of purpley blue through here. Elementary schools, oftentimes that's something that's important to neighborhoods and families. And middle school zones, I'll take elementary schools off, that's a lot. Those are middle school zones. And high school zones. And then we do have the census blocks where each current city council member is. So when we look at draft maps, we can put layers over them. So if, for instance, you wanted to see scenario 1 and you wanted to see it with current council members and the current ward lines, this is what that would look like. We are able to zoom in very closely. We can get down to individual street names, although that often isn't required. So my goal here is to, and if there is a layer that you think would be very helpful when we start looking at the draft maps, let me know if, no, okay. So we're gonna just walk through the draft maps and we will start with scenario 1. So scenario 1 has a total deviation 2%. I'm going to zoom out so you can see the whole picture a little bit better. So it's a total deviation of 2.2%. Ward 6, which is this purple ward here, represents sort of a downtown core. And this does include the university. And the northern boundary here follows 395 and stops sort of just north of Sienna Park Drive. And the driver there is really to be able to balance population for each of these wards. Down here, Double Diamond Ranch is split between wards 2 and 3, the yellow and the teal wards. This map itself actually adheres most closely to the current city wards as we could get, with the exception, obviously, of Ward 6, which covers the downtown portion. So scenario 2, and the pink lines again are the current city council lines. I'm going to shut those off for this purpose. So this is draft scenario map 2. It's got a total deviation of 1.5%. This map was created in particular to have multiple touch points for the downtown area. So areas 2, 3, and 4, which are the yellow, the teal, and the lime green. So we've got right here is sort of what each of those touches into that downtown area. UNR is included in Ward 4, which is this lime green here. It kind of reaches down and picks it up. And then you have this sort of north reach here in order to pick up population for Ward 4. This map does, sorry, I flipped too fast. So Ward 6 here, this purple ward, contains most of Double Diamond Ranch, not all of it in its entirety. This is draft map 3. Total deviation for this map is 2%. And the downtown is divided between wards 2, 5, and 6. It sort of has this reach across here. University is split between 5 and 6 here, sort of almost in half a little bit right there on between that purple and that line there. And Ward 3 does contain nearly all of Double Diamond Ranch. This is, again, an iterative process. We were trying to get Double Diamond Ranch in one map in its entirety, and you have to wait for that. It comes up next in a few. There were district or map submissions that split the blue and the teal down here. So 1 and 3 down here with this northern reach of 1 into North Valley. And then there were some community of interest that came up as well, particularly around this area and keeping that area whole within that ward. So the district or maps, when we first started looking at them, a lot of them had the southern area split north-south, and then some started coming up with east-west splits. And so this is to sort of recognize that these east-west splits would also be an option. This is draft scenario 4. Total pop deviation is 2%. Downtown is divided again between 1, 2, 3, and 6. So it's got a little bit more sort of in this central area where they all kind of come together and pick up a little piece. Again, Double Diamond is split between 2 and 3, but you can see that the 2 and 3 districts go farther north-south than the previous map. university is split between 1 and 6. It's split here in that area. This is scenario draft map 5. Total deviation is 1.9%. This is an iterative map where we're looking at the downtown primarily contained in Ward 6, in this purple ward here, with a little bit of 3 picking up on this side. So this map does preserve all of Double Diamond Ranch in Ward 2. So this map is similar to the first draft map that we went through, with the southernmost wards splitting a little bit more north-south, and also containing Double Diamond Ranch in one map. But not least, we have scenario 6. So this map has a deviation of 4.4%. The city charter does require a 5% or under, so we're still under deviation in that respect. Similar to map 1 and 5, downtown is primarily again in Ward 1 with a small portion over here in Ward 3. And this map also preserves all of Double Diamond Ranch in Ward 6, down here in the purple. I will say that there is one piece. So this, the sort of westernmost reach of the city, we did follow 80 as a southern barrier for this particular district in all of the draft, nearly all of the draft scenarios. And the reason being is because 80 is such a major arterial and it is easily sort of a divider that can be used.
Awesome. Thank you, Kimmy, so much for walking us through. So you can see that they're based on the feedback, we're piecemealing different pieces together, and you're probably looking at a map and going, that's weird. That's not what I was thinking. I know I thought that when I saw a few of them. So I want to hear those things from you through the next few bits of the process for the next few weeks. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to do that. Can we please go back to the presentation? All right, so now as we are turning our attention to phase 2, your feedback is on these maps that we just walked through. And there's going to be multiple ways that you can tell us your thoughts. Please know on this slide that deadline of July 14th, this is when our online tools will close, and we don't really have any more meetings until we present the final map. So July 14th, gives us several weeks to kind of review these and have multiple input opportunities. We're going to need that time in between to finesse, really understand public input, and bring forward the final map options that are more clean and reflect additional input for the next round. So the first tool, and it's online right now, is there is a survey for the draft scenarios. Simple survey, each map is available there, and it asks you a couple questions. Please rate the map, how well you think it does. What do you like about it? What could be better? So it'll be great to hear from individuals about what they think about those maps. We also know a lot of people have enjoyed using the Redistrictor tool. And this is our online public portal where you can actually draw the boundaries. And so the way, there's two things. You can continue to submit any maps free form that you want to provide. We're going to continue to look at those and see how they all compare. But you can also revise these scenarios 1 through 6. What you're going to look for is what you can see on your screen. They are labeled draft scenario 1, draft scenario 2. If you find them and open it up, then you can edit it and you just resubmit it. It doesn't change those ones. These ones stay the same, but we can kind of see how that builds off of each other going forward. I grab a question at the end just because So the question for those who are on the Zoom was, whether they can be pinned to the front. Kimmy, I'm going to ask you that question at the end. Cool. We'll remember to answer it. Okay, we are also going to host a series of what I call drop-in sessions. So what is a drop-in session? They are a series of set times and locations throughout the community. We won't be giving a presentation. So each of them are 2 hours long that you can come in any point in that window when it works for you. And we will have these maps posted on a big piece of paper so you can kind of see them up close and personal. You can answer the survey while we're there. We will also have staff there to answer any questions or talk to you about the maps. And we often write down notes that we hear from people too and submit those as part of the feedback. And are these drop-in sessions? Here is the schedule for you. So tomorrow we're going to be at Feed the Camel from 4 to 6 at McKinley. So come stop by our table. We will be there with this setup to hear from you. We will also be, then we have a series happening the week of July 10th. We thought we'd leave the week of July 4th alone since people are traveling, didn't want to provide too many conflicts for everybody. So we'll be up in the North Valleys area at the community center on July 10th. We will be in Northwest Reno at the fire station on Mayan on July 11th. We'll be in South Reno at the library on July 12th. And we'll also be at Paradise Park on July 12th, just later in the day. Spanish support will be available at each of these drop-in sessions for any individuals who would like to come and need some assistance. We will have staff there who speak Spanish. And at the meeting at the South Valleys Library, we will also have American Sign Language support for individuals to participate that way as well. Lastly, the one that you see here in blue, Reno City Drop-In Center, Reno City Hall Drop-In Center. So here at City Hall in the lobby, we are going to be setting up the maps, and they will be available for anybody to peruse during normal business hours through July 14th. It'll start this Thursday through July 14th. So you can come in, look at the maps, the surveys will be available. We will not have staff there full time, kind of staffing that table. There'll be notes on how you can participate. If you would like to meet with staff by coming to City Hall, you can just set an appointment with us, email redistricting@reno.gov, and we'll find a time that works for everybody to make sure that we are available for you. So that wraps up the presentation tonight. We are going to turn to our Q&A session. If you have questions or comments, so if you're in person, we're going to ask you to come to the mics because we need the audio to come through there. We will also, if you are on Zoom, please raise your hand in the webinar controls and we'll kind of bounce back and forth. When we go to you, I'll call on you and ask you to unmute yourself. If you're on the phone, you can dial 9. So with that, I see somebody here ready to talk to us. So please.
I was just curious. So we have 1, 3, 5, and 6 that are getting reelected. So in those particular wards, whatever they end up being, right now there's people seated, elected in those wards. What are you doing as far as, are they staying? Are you making sure that their addresses stay in the wards that they may run again for or whatever? How are you working that?
So the principles that were adopted by council are specific that just 2 and 4 have to be maintained. So you'll see some of the options have people in different wards than what they're representing now. Some stay the same. It's kind of a mixture.
They don't know what ward they're going to be running in.
That is correct. Yes. Yes, Councilmember Dewar and Councilmember Ebor, because they were elected through 2026, we know that they will continue to be on the board. Council. William, how are you? Can I turn it over to Kimmy to answer your first question?
Please. No, Ben. Kimmy, can you answer my first question?
I sent it to my 2 demographers because
Okay.
they're the ones that post on Districtor, so they'll know best. So I should have an answer for you in the morning.
So if not that, then a search function, if that's possible. Whichever, just otherwise, it's already difficult to load, even with only 90 maps getting to the bottom. So Okay.
Well, thank you. Well, I'll work with the flow team to figure out a solution.
perfect. So first questions, besides that one, compactness means what? Can you give us the flow analytics definition of that?
Yeah, so compactness is literally just that. It's how compact a ward would be. So there are ways we can measure that mathematically. There's something called a Polsby-Popper scale that we can use to determine how compact something is. We don't typically do that because generally speaking, if a ward looks compact, it is. And by compact, I mean that it's in one place and that you don't have wards, sort of ribboning across the city and down and around and things like that. So it's really, it goes a little bit hand in hand with contiguity, but it is really just the idea that something is visually compact.
So that was my expectation of the definition of compactness, because that does naturally make sense. But with that being said, I would say draft maps 2 through 5 violate compactness in near totality, which makes a problem for a multitude of options to be considered, because if 2 through 5 are problematic in that definition, I'm not sure why they're draft maps right now. Even though I did understand the scenarios that were attempted to be accomplished and as pronounced, I think that's problematic. But we're going to be considering non-compact maps for the next 3 weeks, which seems bad. I'll say that. And additionally, my last question is, do we have the Voting Rights Act definitions or constraints somewhere listed within the redistricting? I know it's saying abide by, but I'm not sure what that means. I could go look them up, but if we could get some kind of quick summary of what those are in, like, on the webpage, so that we could see that when making maps or considering redrafting of these maps, I think that's valuable, because I think that's probably more likely attuned towards population levels and not being like, this is a 90% population of this race and a 10% of this race. I assume that's more what it's about, but I don't know. So thank you.
Okay, so I can address a little bit about the Voting Rights Act piece. The Voting Rights Act primarily focuses on whether or not you can create what they call majority minority districts. And so when the census goes out, it takes a look at, I think it's 5 different races. And so it groups them together. So Asian Pacific Islanders gets grouped as one, as a whole group. White is another one. Native Americans or Alaskan Natives is grouped as another one. Black or African Americans are grouped as one entire block. So, and then Latinos are also grouped as one. Latinos/Hispanics are also grouped as one race. And so the Voting Rights Act is really whether or not you have, or you could draw a district, a ward where 50% or more of the citizen voting age population is of one of those races. And in the city of Reno, we could not draw a ward that was 50% or more of citizen voting age population, which is what they use to measure that, versus, say, total population, which is a little bit different. So we could not draw a majority minority ward, and we tried, and we could not do it. So the Voting Rights Act in that sense is not necessarily a concern for the city, which is a legal question that you should take to your council if any of that, if there looks like a challenge, but at this point, we could not draw a district.
All right, we're going to go to the Zoom. No, Pablo, we're going to go to the Zoom first, then you can come up to the mic. Tony, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself, and we'd love to hear from you. Welcome tonight.
Hey, how's it going? Great presentation. Just wanted to make a quick statement in support of a couple maps. So Tony Ramirez with Make Road, Nevada. I'm in support of 5 and 6, but believe that Montello Street area should be added to Ward 3, so the communities aren't separated. The latest census info shows that approximately 60% of the people who call Reno home are white, but over 85% of the members of the council are white. Multiple studies over the years have shown that majority minority districts elevate the minority representation. Additional minority representation on the council is desperately needed to make sure all of the voices in our communities are being heard. I think any discussion of systemic racism must begin with a discussion about our country's history of creating barriers for people of color to participate in the political process. Over the last 60 years, we've seen that the best way to increase minority participation and elevate minority representation is through majority minority districts. If the council eliminates the majority minority districts in Ward 3 and 4, it will be sending a very clear message to the communities that we represent at Make the Road of color who call Reno home. And we don't want to do that. So again, in support of those two maps, 5 and 6. Thank you.
I appreciate the comments tonight. Judy, we're going to take another one from Zoom. Please unmute yourself. Judy, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can. Welcome.
Okay. Well, I wanted to make a comment that scenario 6 is contiguous, and I think it represents the population in South Reno. Thank you.
Great. Great. Thank you so much for your feedback. Appreciate you being here tonight. Pablo, do you want to jump up here? Okay. We'll return to the Zoom after this. Go ahead, Pablo.
Hi, hello guys. My name is Pablo Duan. I live in Ward 3. Hello guys, my name is Pablo Duan. I live in Ward 3, and I do like option 4, 5, and 6 because so for option 1, I'm gonna come back. Option 1 is very simple. So maybe they could pass through it. So. All right.
Pablo, we're having a little trouble, so I'm going to hold the mic for you, okay?
Oh, okay. So my name is Pablo Duan. I live in Ward 3. So option 1 is a really simple question. It geographically makes sense. But for a little trouble is use better South Mill area. And I don't like it. So option 2 is very generally very illegal. So I don't like the option 2. So option 3, same thing, gerrymander, but this one, Ward 1 could be fit because 43% Hispanics. So I know you talk about the minority majority district. So I think that option 3 might work. So that could be a legal challenge for them. Option 4, yep. I like option 4, but switch it from 6 to 3 and then 3 to 6. I like option 4. I lean to option 4. Option 5, I do like option 5. And I do like option 5. Keep its community as a whole with the Northeast Reno. So, and then option 6, I do like option 6 and 5. So, but we should add a Manolo Street. But since we add Manolo Street, that's our standard deviation. That means if you create option 7, it's just create like similar as option 5 and 6, but add like Manolo Street and Northeast Reno, make a Northeast Reno as a community together, make it together, and then remove New World area our dams. So you make inside a standard deviation.
Thanks, Pablo. Appreciate it. Let's go. William on the Zoom. Please unmute yourself. Love to hear from you. Welcome tonight.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. First of all, thank you for everybody who put work into this. This is great, and I appreciate the input. I have just a couple of comments and then a question for clarification. One comment I had heard is And I think this really makes sense because there's a lot of competing interests. The decisions that are made shouldn't be based on any incumbent personalities that are on the council, but really what happens 10 years from now. The decisions we make, the ward lines, how they're drawn. Think about what the community will be going into the end of the decade. And then I will have redistricting again after reapportionment in 2030. That being said, I feel very strongly that there are a couple of communities of interest that have common issues that should stay together. One of them, the North Valleys, should not be split up. I think that they're a community of interest. They have issues, lots of issues that they are, that they have to figure out. I mean, the traffic being one of them. It's insane, the commute time that the people in the North Valleys have to take going in and out work every day. The second, and there's a history of downtown being split up between all the wards. I think downtown along the freeway, between the freeway and the river, that is definitely a community of interest. I mean, with the revitalization that's going on downtown, the care center, the university is definitely a community of interest. So I would hope that that there would be a ward representative for that area, and especially when you want people living downtown, you need to have amenities like stores, not liquor stores for shopping centers, but real stores like what we have in the neighborhood. And then finally, I would say probably Southeast Reno, it's an area of growth, and their issues are going to probably be different from the other issues in town. So those are my comments regarding that. I really think I feel strongly that our inner core needs a representative because they need an advocate. And then my question is, could you clarify the rules with existing council or the incumbent council persons and the ward boundary? Am I correct in the notion that a sitting council person has to be in a ward? They can't be drawn out. Is that correct?
So because, thank you so much for the comments first, appreciate
Sure.
that. To the question, so the principles and under the legal review, as this redistricting process is slightly nuanced because, well, really nuanced, because it connects to an election cycle. And so the review has showed that the council members in 2 and 4 are the ones that we have to retain in their districts, but the other ones not necessarily.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate it. And hey, one parting comment, and I mean this sincerely. I mean, I know there's going to be a lot of suspicion. I mean, politics, there's always suspicion in this, but I hope people would remember not only you and the staff, but our election workers in the voter registrar. I mean, you guys are the ones that are maintaining our democracy. So let's save the criticism for the politicians and not the staff. You guys are working under a lot of pressure, and we need to have confidence in the system. So thank you very much, and have a nice evening.
You too. Thanks for being here tonight. We're going to take a comment from the room.
The first person who doesn't have to duck down. So my name is Judy Rott. I currently live in Ward 1, and I can tell that a lot of work has gone into this process. And it's been actually really interesting talking to a bunch of different people about it. My 9-year-old niece actually made her own map. I showed her, here's where Ward 2, this person has to be this person in Ward 4, and she colored in the rest, and she told me she had fun. So she likes your software. And I think she got between like a 1.75 deviation in what she did. She said, I'm done. So what I notice on most of these maps is that they are not compact. My 9-year-old niece's was much more compact than this. So I wanted to kind of just revisit one of the things that I heard in the very first meeting was that we couldn't do spaghetti. And as someone who lives in Ward 1, one of these maps, I think it was 4 or 5, almost none of Ward 1 has been retained in it. It's completely everywhere else. And I suddenly feel disowned by that particular map. In talking to a lot of different people that I've spoken with about this, majority of people were thinking that districts or Ward 6 needs to be south. That's where all the new growth is. That's where the vast majority of it is. And the only one of these maps that did that was 6. So I'm really concerned about how much was the data that everybody was putting out on the website and making their own maps. How much was that actually used at this point in time for these? Because I know there are maps still being drawn and that people are still filling them in. And it feels like if that was where a lot of them are, that that's not being listened to. So how much of the maps were actually used at this point?
I mean, do you want me to answer first, or do you want to take a shot at that? Go ahead. So I think what you're seeing is there's a mixture, right? You are right. We intentionally left. So the first deadline was last Thursday to submit maps, which really it gave us a weekend to kind of help solidify everything and put some maps together. What you didn't see, right, is all of the community of interest, different components, and the maps are a reflection of kind of challenging different pieces together to kind of see what will work and what won't work. And so, as Kimmy mentioned, the process is really meant to be iterative and hear from you. The one thing I was going to ask Kimmy to comment on, because we've had a lot of conversations about it, is Reno isn't compact in general. When you compare it to other cities, we're actually kind of squirrely and wild as it is.
Valleys
So
do that.
yes. So Kimmy, could you talk about how that impacts the demographers, drawings, and the compactness level?
Yeah, so the city is a very interesting shape and lots of spaces that are unincorporated even within the city confines. So it does present some challenges when we're trying to draw 6 wards that are equal population. The compactness piece is a should in terms of the city charter, and the contiguity piece is a must. And so what we were looking at primarily, compactness is important. Contiguity sort of is one step above it, at least when we're looking at what we are required to do for these maps. So I understand the concerns about compactness. And I think that when we look at the maps, and I'm assuming that a lot of the concerns are the districts that are doing reaches up into other areas, maybe that they weren't in prior and those kinds of things. And a lot of that is to balance population because there are areas of the city that are very populated, and then we have other areas that are far less populated. And so it requires some, balancing around those things.
It feels gerrymandered. And part of that I'm saying as someone who is planning on running for a city council seat, it's really nice to be able to go, okay, my district is between here and here and here and here. And that makes it super easy. But all 4 of the maps, it'd be like, okay, so if you live in this block over here, or if you go this way, and there seemed like a number of the maps don't include, it felt like, it feels like they were made by someone who doesn't live in Reno or doesn't know Reno, and that the streets you weren't using main arteries very often. They weren't easily defined. So it just, like I said, that was the last piece I want to say, is it feels like someone who doesn't live here made them. Thank you.
Thanks for your feedback. Let's go back to the Zoom. Sorry, Donna, please unmute yourself.
Donna Keats, I want to thank you, Kelly, for another great presentation. You're very good at this and it's very clear. I had a couple of questions. And I agree with the previous speaker a lot, like looking at, I believe it's map number 4, where it's all long north-south strips over the whole length of the city. Seems a little odd to have two side-by-side long linear things instead of a southern chunk and then a middle chunk. Some things like that do seem kind of odd. And I guess in this version of listening to presentations, I keep rolling back to the how things get divided and why we keep coming back to populations, gerrymandering, trying to create districts that are primarily non-white, because I thought that's all stuff we're not supposed to be doing. Maybe I'm wrong about that. So maybe you could clarify that, because it keeps coming up over and over again. And my impression, possibly erroneous, but was to keep communities together, make compact wards, and balance the population along, on the boundaries. So if things go a little bit farther north and south, east and west. So there's that. It seems to me that's pretty methodical and doesn't have a lot to do with trying to incorporate whatever population somebody wants to incorporate. So there's that. Second question. This is actually a question. I think I might have just lost it though. But that part about the maps. Okay. And then some of these maps that are really long and skinny are hard for me to kind of get a handle on. But the other thing to bring around when people are talking about, I used to be in this ward, now I'm in that ward. My opinion is that a point of clarity that might be missed is that these numbers don't have to be the numbers that are on these maps. So the map that shows the number 6 all the way in the north could easily just have number 6 on the south. It doesn't really matter because there's nothing magic about the numbers. It's just that the sitting council person who lasts through the next election needs to be in a ward. It doesn't have to be called Ward 2 or Ward 4 though. Is it, or did I misunderstand?
Donna, on that particular piece, so where Councilmember Dewar lives will have to be Ward 2, and where Councilmember Ebert lives has to be Ward 4. In theory, those two could flip-flop but the mayor 2 and 4 on the same election cycle. So
Right.
if you were to switch, like let's say where Councilmember Dewar lives and put Ward 1 there, that switches her election cycle, which wouldn't work because she was just voted.
Okay.
So 2 and 4
Okay.
are where we would stay, but 1, 3, 5, and 6 could all be interchangeable in this
Right.
process.
I forgot you had mentioned that before about the election cycles, but I guess then, I guess I would say, as you go through this, if you had said across the board, number 6 is going to be always in the north. Number 2 and number 4 will be where it is, or number 6 is always going to be in the same place, but with all the different iterations, the numbering swings around on all of them. So it, I think, leads to some confusion. It makes it harder to compare. Well, now Ward 6 in the north. No, now Ward 6 on the west. No, now Ward 6 is in the south. But actually, those 3 things can change. It doesn't really matter. So why not call everything in the south Ward 6 just so people don't get confused? If you see what I mean.
Yeah, no, great. Thanks for your feedback. Kimmy, can you talk about what Donna's first question was related to the Constitution Voting Rights Act and how there are different kind of things that we are required to look at, but not also look at. So could you address that?
Okay, so the Voting Rights Act, while it does cover majority minority districts, which was the previous question, also requires that you cannot draw a district or a ward in this case solely based on race. And so it feels like those two things are very conflicting, but they are different. And so I think when we were talking about majority minority districts, I think that was perhaps what led to the question about race.
Okay, if I can follow on that question, then it wasn't just strictly that comes up at just about every meeting about gerrymandering and the fear of gerrymandering. But would I be correct or incorrect in saying that your goal or you're not making this primarily about race? It is really population based, isn't it?
Yes.
So this whole question that we keep drifting into at various meetings about gerrymandering and race, and we've got to draw it this way so that we can have, you know, the Asians all get a vote and nobody cares about the white guys because they're always going to get all the vote, clearly, because that's our majority population. But that's just, it seems to me that's an inappropriate kind of conversation from how I understand this process. So could you clarify that for me?
I think this does speak to when we talk about communities of interest, oftentimes communities who have those common interests, who live in neighborhoods that have those interests or are populated together. That is typically where we see that kind of feedback coming up, is within the context of communities of interest.
Uh-huh. Okay. Because I mean, those are community of interest. They are in my area where I live. Non-white population is large. And my doorbell rang, so my dog went nuts. I'm sorry. But yeah, so that's all I was wondering, because I know that those are communities, and that makes sense. And then and that makes total sense. But I just wanted to be clear, because it seems to me there's some confusion about what we're really trying to accomplish, you know? So anyway, thank you. I won't take up any more of your time. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Donna.
Okay, bye.
All right, we're going to take one more on the Zoom. I think it's Wanda. Wanda, please unmute yourself. Love to hear from you tonight.
There, can you hear me now?
We can.
I'm here, can you hear? Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure I understood and clarify, because I keep hearing different conflicting information. Ward Doer, and I don't remember who was in the other Ward 4, those have to stay the same. And the reason we're doing the maps is so that the other people who run for those empty seats understand that they're filing for the correct wards, correct? Or am
So
I
Wanda,
wrong on that?
every ward will change. Because in able to balance the population and add a 6th ward, all 5 wards are going to have to change
Right.
some.
Correct. But what I'm saying is the reason it doesn't matter that the other people will represent until those 2024 elections. The reason we're doing this now is so that they can run for those empty seats at that time, correct?
Doing
Meaning,
the
let's say,
redistrict. Oh, sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, by doing the redistricting process, we will know the maps by September. So any individual in the community who wants to run for one of the vacant seats would know where they are and can consider that that possibility of whether they want to run and file for office.
correct. That's why we only need to know wards 2 and 4, because they have to stay in their current district. That's the only ward. Otherwise, the other
You're
ones,
correct.
they'll know far enough ahead if I'm in Ward 3 or 6 or wherever it is, I'll know my lines. And if I don't live in that, then I have to apply for the different ward, correct? That's why we're doing this?
I wouldn't necessarily, that's why we're doing it, but that is an implication of the process. Yes.
Well, but I mean, that's why we don't know where everybody lives, is because that could change depending on how we change these wards. I just wanted to make sure, because everybody's asking me and I can't explain it to them. And I said, okay, this is what I think, and I don't want to be giving out bad information. So that part is correct. So that's how that all worked. But the other people, the current seats will stay there until the elections of 2024, correct?
Yes. So the current body that you see, in council meetings right now will continue to serve and represent the community all the way up until November of 2024. Yeah, I see where you're coming from. Okay, I'm following now, Wanda. Thank you. Okay. Yes. So the process is we are doing the maps now. So we will have the maps in place for all purposes necessary to carry out the election. Candidate filing, voting, knowing what ward you're in so you can vote. But the individuals who currently sit on council will continue to represent the city and their current representatives up until November of 2024. Then that's really where the Ward 6 member takes effect. And that's where then the representation will change.
And that's where, if they're currently on the council, they just decide after we do this, decide whether they're going to change which area that they, you know, if the lines change, they go from 3 to 1 or whatever, then they are able to make sure that they file on the correct one. That's why we're doing this ahead of time. So everybody knows what they're doing for elections for next year, correct?
Yeah.
All right, good. And then the other question I have, just because on Zoom, I can't really see the lines. When I go in, I can still go on these maps and go street by street on where those lines are drawn by blowing them up, correct?
And I would suggest using that web application
Right.
that Kimmy was using. It really lets you kind of go in and see closer. The PDF version that has all the summary data is really kind of big picture view.
Right, exactly. And that's why I wanted to make sure that we could go in and actually look, because you were changing Ward 2, it looked like quite a bit in those maps. So I just wanted, before I gave my opinions, I wanted to go in and look at each on how Wards 2 and 3 are changed. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you for all the work that you guys do. I appreciate it.
Thanks for being here tonight. We're going to take a comment from the room.
Okay, so first of all, I think the majority minority, I do think that's confusing and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I don't think it makes sense to a lot of people, and I think that's well, you know, we all live in neighborhoods. We all know our neighborhood. And I think that's important to keep in mind when these are being drawn, as opposed to little fingers going out here and there. I think it's important to keep, when that goes to compactness, I guess, is, you know, keeping neighborhoods. And I just think that's important.
Thank you. Let's take another comment from the room, please.
But my question. By the way, kudos to both of you. It's been a great job. Okay. I can never be a singer. This is evident. So I run political campaigns for a living. Okay. And we've got a lot of people who want to run, but they can't announce they're running because they don't know where they are. Okay. So final will be September 1st and not before that. I mean, is there going to be another option? Just because we have somebody raising a lot of money, a current person, and none of them can go raise any money, or if they're afraid to. I mean, you know.
So the schedule right now puts that is August 9th would be first reading of council, and second reading would be August 23rd, I think, if that's a Wednesday. I'm close, I'm hoping.
You're close, yeah.
And so in a perfect world, and the perfect schedule as it's set, council would know and adopt the map that day. So
Okay.
August 23rd.
So they've got a little bit more time. And then it's kind of hard to see the streets. So I should go to the web application and pull it up as a PDF, because I keep trying to expand it with my fingers because I am old and not technology driven. So what's the best way?
So I would say the web app is very good because you have the opportunity to drill in and look at the data layers. However, I would also say that these draft maps are in Districtor, and you can also go to those draft maps in Districtor and zoom in and see where those boundaries are as well.
Okay.
And Districtor is, I think, probably a more intuitive tool.
Okay,
to use than the
fabulous.
web app.
So I'll be able to see them that way.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
One more in the room.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I do not envy what you're doing here. When I look at these maps, the city boundaries, and I see all the constraints relative to topography from P-Vine, I think I counted 6 unincorporated county areas here, plus the city of Sparks, which is another. So it's a tough job, especially to do the compactness component. As a city planner, though, I know this process is being accelerated because of the upcoming election, 24. But as a city planner, I'll look way beyond that. I'm looking at spheres of influence down the road. What are these boundaries going to be 10 years from now? And I think that compactness maybe can be accomplished as it goes down the road. But that's not what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about downtown. My wife and I bought our first unit in Reno in 2011 in the Montage, which is currently in District or in Ward 5, downtown Reno. I spent over 40 years working for cities, 6 cities, and I was consultant for a lot more. And one of the things I learned during that time is that typically the downtown of any community is the heart of the community. It is what reflects the image of the community in most cases. In my opinion, the more wards that can take parts of downtown, the better, preferably 4. Why 4? Because if you have a body of 7 members, it takes 4 people to make something happen. So that would be my preference. But thank you.
Great, thanks so much. Pablo, we're going to go to the Zoom. I'm taking a few comments in here, so hold on tight for me. Carla, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Thanks for being here tonight.
Of course, thank you. My name is Carla Sanchez. I am a proud organizer with Make the Road Nevada, and I have 2 important points to address regarding the redistricting process. Firstly, majority minority districts promote inclusion and increase minority participation in elections. Dividing communities of color in wards 3 and 4 may hinder political engagement for people of color, negatively impacting our community. Secondly, Ward 3 houses Reno's largest community, Latino community, and splitting it would diminish their influence. I support draft scenario 5 and 6, but urge adding the Montello Street area to Ward 3 to prevent community separation. Thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate you being here tonight. Let's take one in the audience right here.
Paul Kaiser.
I'll hold it for you.
Okay. Paul Kaiser, live at 235 Bisbee Street by the university. I've been there for 27 years. Again, thank you all for the work you're doing on this. I know it's not easy to do this. Our house was built in 1948, and the last redistricting in 2021 did something to our neighborhood, which I mean, it's major irritation for me, because we were flagpoled into North Valleys. Now our house was built in 1948. Our issues are with the university, with students moving, with 2/3 of our houses are student rental houses. We have 4 or 5 driving adults living in these houses and still within a neighborhood. We have significant issues. Now, our councilperson, Megan Ebert, is wonderful, but our needs in our neighborhood are completely different than North Valleys. I mean, there are similarities, and I'm not saying one's better than the other. What I'm saying is that we need representation that reflects what our needs are in our community. And so that is a major issue for me. I went through and I drew my map, which was it was a More Better Reno map. And I tried to keep the current districts 1 through 5 together, so there wasn't that much of a change, and then just put the downtown area into one map. The problem that I've seen with all the maps here is that any that do that, they tend to branch off into over the hill, over where DRI and stuff is. And that is really the division line. There's no comparing the communities on this side, on the south side of that division line, with the north side of that division line. So I would lobby strongly to keep all those, that division there, because it just makes more sense. The other one is when I drew the map, I was pleasantly surprised that it gave one ward, and that was Ward 3, and another ward a larger representation of Hispanic. According to the 2020 census, we have over 23% of the Reno's population is Latino. And it's great that we have, Miguel, Councilperson Martinez, on the council, but he had to be appointed. And it should be a situation to where that it's not too far of a reach for a person of color to get elected. And all the scenarios that have, 27 or less percentage representation of that community, I think is just kind of almost racial gerrymandering, because it's making sure that they don't have a unified voice in any one district.
Thank you. All right, Pablo, you're up.
Hello, guys. My name Paul again. So, for a reason why I support 4, 5, 1, 4, 5, and 6 is it because it look clean on the paper, but this problem is gerrymander a little bit gerrymander. But the where I will fix is on the map is not over yet. So I heard people say like why there's a 4, 5, or 6 because of political reason, but we're not here for political reason. This is non-partisan race. So City of Reno is supposed to be non-partisan, not gerrymandering. So we have 14 amendment that prohibit using race. And then we have 4 Voting Rights Acts of 1965 that we could consider as one race to make up minority majority rule. So you imagine that you guys try to avoid dilution rules. So that's great. That's great. So I did withdraw the district star map. So I tried to make the Ward 3 as a majority district, but none of it would come up with 50% or more. I try, but it just don't work, including Ward 6, because Hispanic population, I know it's 23% of Hispanic population, but the problem is this right out for Reno. And the only like it is like 37 to 43% Hispanic in Ward 3 that the new maps. And I'm here for support 5 and 6, but add a Modelo Street and remove near Ward area. And we know like I heard say like we want to add a Modelo Street to make more Hispanic, more like unified area. We could do that, but that could be our a standard deviation. So both. So
Thank you.
I know Miguel Martinez live in Don Spring.
Perfect. Thanks, Pablo. All right, we're going to the Zoom. Judy, floor is yours.
Hi, I was just wondering, since, all this discussion and, we're now in Ward 2. So I want to understand. So Naomi will be our council person until someone is voted in 2024, and then she'll be our council person until 2026. Is that correct?
It would depend on, so Councilmember Dewar will represent the exact same boundary that she does right now until 2024. I can't answer the second half of that question until we know what the map is and know where you live to understand whether Councilmember Dewar would be your representative or you would have voted for another council member based on this process.
Oh, okay. I was confused because I thought somewhere in this process, there was a comment that Naomi would be our council person until 2026, but obviously that's not the case.
Well, I understand we're getting some comments from the room. You are right. She is elected to 2026, but where you specifically live, the boundary could change. So Councilmember Dewar will definitely be a council member on this body until 2026.
Okay, so
the specific land that she represents will change through this process.
Okay, so with this new change, she may not represent us, even though she's going to be on the council until 2026.
Yes, that is a possibility.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, last call for comments. Please, somebody in the room.
Thank you. It's Tony. Thank you so much. As you talked about it in the very
Will you
beginning.
get up? Yeah, sorry.
Okay, there we go. You were talking about, and I love this term, multiple touch points to downtown. That's so beautiful. Okay. The only one that is coming close to that is scenario number 2. Is that, and then you have, well, what would be Ward 6 way there to the south? Is that you didn't have a chance to really work with that? And is there some opportunities to work with that between now and the next meetings?
Absolutely. So there definitely is opportunity to work through that
Okay.
100%. I will, Kimmy, I don't know if you have anything to add to that. I do think that some, like, I think it was 3 and 4, have touch points in a different fashion.
Right, right. So we're beginning the process, and I'm just adding on to the gentleman that spoke earlier about that. And I just also agree with this gentleman about the neighborhoods, and I think that's where we're going to be fine tuning it in the next 2. So thank you very much for the time.
Thanks for being here. All right, last call for comments tonight. Anybody on the Zoom or in the room? Please raise your hand. All right, thank you guys for being here so much. We look forward to hearing your input and seeing you again in July.